Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 28th of June, comes to you from Bermuda. And quite a lot of moves in the markets yesterday. We see the dollar here having fallen heavily. This is the dollar index chart. And so the dollar fell heavily yesterday. We see that showing up in the daily candle here, and we're just taking us quite convincingly on the price below the cloud. So we could be seeing a long-term trend change occurring here in the dollar. We do have a downside target now of 93.13. Key thing here is this 93.50, 93.40 level. That would unwind this target here for certain. Of course, this one is in train from a big jump in 2014. But we are just seeing these downside targets creeping in, and it's looking a bit more bearish for the dollar. So that's quite key. And if we look at the euro, we're seeing that real euro strength filtering through. Euro looking like it's undergoing quite a significant trend transition here as well. And again, if we move higher than this 115 level, that's the level we've been saying. We're at 113.69 at the moment. 115, if we spend a day or two above that, then that would negate certainly this downside target, and this would be a new downside target that would be negated as well. So we are seeing targets to 118 now, 115, so it looks like we might actually see that transition. Having had several weeks of sideways movement, the move higher is quite significant. So the euro could well be undergoing a long-term trend change. Looking at the Japanese yen, we see that the yen is actually, again, this is dollar weakness here, so we're just seeing the dollar weaker, but against the yen, the dollar has actually climbed over the last few days, so yen is even weaker still. Looking at sterling, sterling US dollar has held up pretty well since the UK election at 128, and we are seeing again that dollar weakness really showing through here. But if we look at sterling euro, the story is very, very different. This morning we're making a 7-month low. We can see that on the chart across to here, back to November levels. So this is a 7-month low against the euro for sterling, and lots of downside targets. So we are seeing targets to 110, 110.40, 110.50, so they're about 2% downside still on the cards. Looking at the Swiss franc, we see here again that we're moving lower and below the cloud, and we've got downside targets here as well. And the Australian dollar, sterling actually looking a little bit stronger here against the Aussie dollar, so Australian dollar weakness in line with US dollar weakness. Taking a look at stock markets, US market fell heavily yesterday. We're down nearly 1% on the S&P 500. That's taken us below the cloud in the short term, so that's given us short-term downtrend. Medium and long-term trends are very much intact, of course, but we do have this new downside target of about 0.8% downside, back to 2400. So we're pretty close to that now, but it is bearish now below the cloud, so we are just seeing a sell-off in markets. And of course, Nasdaq is the one that we've been most worried about, and we've got this 56.30 area that was set on the 9th and 15th of June. It's the Nasdaq 100 chart, and we have come right back below. So this recovery is really uncertain at the moment, and starting to look a little bit head and shoulderish on the Nasdaq. It's too early to say, but we see that just showing up in the lagging line, so could be quite significant if that is building as a pattern. And the downside, the head isn't massive, so the downside potential is not that great. We've got a downside target here of 5%, which is activated on the Nasdaq. That's back to 5,300. But no real, and we've also got this 52, 55, that's 7% downside. So just watching the Nasdaq is going to be really key. Looking at the Dow Jones, much the same story, we're just coming through on the cloud there as well. And the Russell 2000 also just coming through on the cloud. So US markets just looking a little bit weaker now. The S&P future, very little change this morning, but is of course bearish below the cloud as well. And the Nasdaq E-mini, again, we've got targets of about 5 to 6% downside, so looking quite worrying there. FTSE 100 also looking bearish below the cloud on the short-term chart, with downside potential of about 3%. And the FTSE 250, we've got downside potential anywhere between 3 and 5, 6%. So we are just seeing a global sell-off, really. in the short term. DAX looking bearish as well, below the cloud on the short-term chart. Nikkei holding up quite strongly due to yen weakness, and the Hang Seng is looking a bit more bearish below the cloud on the short-term chart, but not looking as bad as the US and European markets. Shanghai looking stronger, just coming through the cloud on the medium-term chart. So Chinese market starting to look better, and the Indian market had quite a sell-off yesterday as well, and we are just seeing potential of 3% downside here too. Looking at the Australian market, we see here just a small recovery in the index, but really in the doldrums on the medium-term chart. Brent crude again lower this morning. We're back above the cloud on the short term, but if we see any moves to the downside, we're going to activate this target to 44.85. We've got another target of $44 already hanging over us, and if we look at WTI, much the same thing. We've got a downside target of 42.60, and that is hanging over us as well. US Natgas jumped yesterday, so that's above $3. We're at 307 at the moment, so that's quite significant. And we take a look at some of the softs, things like cocoa. We're seeing a bit of recovery there. Coffee actually had a really big jump. There's a very big V-shaped recovery here in coffee. Still bearish though on all three time frames. Do have a massive thrust target off that V-shape, and that's 17% upside, but we do have a lot of downward pressure. Taking a look at gold, we're seeing the risk entering the markets and a bit of a sell-off. Gold is therefore up. We've got a target of 1268. That's 1.3% upside. Just wandering back above the cloud here, so gold is looking more bullish, as is silver. Silver having jumped as well with two upside targets to 1723 and 1686. We're at 1680 at the moment, so we're quite close to that second one. Another big move yesterday was in the US Treasury yields. Jumped by 0.1% from 2.15 to 2.25. So really two big day moves here in Treasuries, and so US market just looking stronger on the interest rate outlook after that IMF announcement of weaker US growth. Apple's been the stock that's worrying me probably more than most in the Nasdaq. Failure to make a new high. We haven't yet made a new low on Apple, but just watch for that. And that's the sort of 142 level. As a bellwether, that's the one I'm watching. Google did sell off very strongly yesterday, down 2.6%, and in fact we are just seeing it really testing the levels that we saw previously this month, so that's quite significant. And again, just in the lagging line, we're seeing these head and shoulders patterns starting to show through, so just need to be a little bit worried about that. Amazon not looking as bad as Google, was off 1.7% yesterday, but again, we are just seeing some volatility. Of course, we had this volatility before, so tech stocks will go through this worry. And Facebook announcing 2 billion users this morning. Again, sold off quite strongly yesterday, down nearly 2%, as did Microsoft. So we've just got to keep an eye on these techs for any new lows, especially on any of these individual stocks, to just give us a heads up for the market. Keep an eye on Apple. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.